Lena Carter was not someone who expected excitement in her life. She worked as a systems engineer on Station Thatnine, a small research outpost orbiting a distant moon. The station was old, its walls lined with patches of rust where repairs had been made over decades. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well enough to keep her going. Most days, Lena spent hours fixing broken air filters, recalibrating oxygen levels, or repairing faulty power conduits. It was quiet, predictable, and safe. That's exactly how she liked it. But tonight, something felt different. The silence outside the station was deeper than usual. Lena sat at her desk in the control room, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug. Her eyes scanned the monitors in front of her, checking readings that hadn't changed in weeks. Pressure levels were stable. Temperature readings were normal. Nothing unusual showed up on any of the screens. Still, a strange feeling nagged at her faint unease she couldn't quite explain. Then came the tremor at first. It was so slight Lena thought it might be her imagination. A low-frequency vibration rattled through the floor beneath her boots. She frowned, setting down her mug and leaning closer to the console. The station's sensors picked up no anomalies. No meteor impacts. No solar flares. Just the steady hum of machinery keeping everything running smoothly. And then it happened again, the tremor, stronger this time. Lena stood up, gripping the edge of her desk. Something was wrong. She activated the external cameras, cycling through views of the station's exterior. At first, all she saw was the endless blackness of space dotted with stars. But then one of the cameras caught movement near the docking bay. Her breath caught in her throat. A massive shape loomed just beyond the airlock, silhouetted against the dim light spilling from the station. It was too big to be human, too wild to be a machine. Whatever it was, it moved with purpose, dragging itself toward the hatch. Lena hesitated, unsure whether to open it. Protocol dictated caution when encountering unknown entities. But there was something about the way the figure moved slowly, deliberately, that made her hesitate. It didn't seem hostile, just desperate. Taking a deep breath, Lena pressed the button to unlock the outer hatch. As the door slid open, a rush of cold air filled the chamber. The figure stumbled inside, collapsing onto the metal floor. Lena gasped. It was an alien, not like anything she'd ever seen before. Towering over her even while lying down, the creature resembled a giant wolf, but not entirely. Its fur was thick and matted, streaked with dirt and what looked like dried blood. One of its eyes was clouded over, milky white instead of bright and alert. Deep scars crisscrossed its body, evidence of battles fought and barely survived. What struck Lena most was what the creature held in its arms, too small. Ice-covered bundles clutched tightly against its chest. Pups, they weren't moving. Lena froze, torn between fear and curiosity. The alien groaned softly, raising its head to look at her. Its good eye locked onto hers, filled with pain and exhaustion, but also something else. Trust, or maybe hope. Whatever it was, it sent a shiver down Lena's spine. She took a step forward. Then another. "I won't hurt you," she said quietly, though she doubted the creature understood her words. She crouched beside it, careful to avoid sudden movements. Up close, she could see how badly injured it was. Frostbite covered its paws, and its breathing came in ragged gasps. Blood seeped from wounds hidden under its fur. Yet despite its condition, it refused to let go of the pups. Lena reached out slowly, her hand trembling. When the alien didn't react aggressively, she touched one of the frozen bundles. It was cold, far colder than it should have been. Ice coated the tiny bodies, making them look fragile and lifeless. For a moment, Lena wondered if they were already dead. But then she noticed something, a faint pulse, barely detectable, coming. From both of them? "They're alive," she whispered, more to herself than to the alien. Turning back to the creature, she added, "I'll help them." The alien let out a low growl, but it didn't resist when Lena gently pried the pups away. Cradling them in her arms, she hurried out of the docking bay and into the main corridor. Her mind raced as she carried the bundles toward the medical bay. What had happened to them? Why were they frozen? And why had the mother brought them here? to this remote station. Halo, the station's AI, greeted her as she entered the medical bay. Unrecognized biological signatures detected, it announced in its calm mechanical voice, "Species classification, unknown. Initiating diagnostic scan." "Skip the scan," Lena said sharply. "We don't have time." She placed the pups on the examination table, stripping off their icy coverings. Their skin shimmered faintly beneath the harsh lights, almost like glass. Lena blinked, startled by the sight, but forced herself to focus. These creatures needed warmth and fast. She turned to Halo. "Activate the cryo revival chamber. Set it for manual override. Warning. Cryo revival chambers are designed for human use only. Proceeding may result in unforeseen complications." "I know the risks," Lena snapped. "Do it anyway." The AI complied without further argument. Moments later, the chamber hissed open, revealing a padded interior lined with heating coils. Lena carefully placed the first pup inside, adjusting the settings to match its vitals as best she could. Then she repeated the process with the second. As the chamber sealed shut, warm air began circulating around the tiny bodies. Lena watched anxiously, waiting for signs of improvement. Behind her, the alien limped into the room. Its steps were slow and labored, but it managed to reach the table where its pups lay encased in the chambers. It stared at them intently, its chest rising and falling with effort. Lena glanced over her shoulder, uncertain what to do next. "You need treatment." "Two," she said, gesturing toward the medical equipment. "Let me help you." The alien didn't respond, at least, not verbally. Instead, it lowered itself to the floor, curling protectively around the cryo chambers. Its posture was clear. It wasn't leaving its young. Lena sighed, realizing there was no point arguing. She grabbed a medkit from the nearby cabinet and knelt beside the creature. Working carefully, she cleaned and bandaged the worst of its wounds. The alien flinched occasionally, but otherwise remained still, its gaze fixed on the chambers. Now and then, it would let out a soft whine, almost like a plea. Hours passed. Lena monitored the pup's progress, tweaking the chamber settings whenever necessary. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, one of them twitched. A tiny movement, barely noticeable, but enough to make Lena's heart leap. She leaned closer, watching as the pup's chest began to rise and fall more steadily. Frost melted away, from its fur revealing sleek, silvery strands that gleamed in the light. Moments later, the second pup followed suit. Both were alive. The alien let out a sound that was half growl, half sigh. It raised its head, looking at Lena with an expression she couldn't quite describe. Gratitude? Relief? Whatever it was, it sent a wave of warmth through her chest. "We did it?" she murmured, smiling despite herself. "You can rest now." But the alien didn't relax. Instead, it nudged the chambers gently, as if urging its pups to wake fully. Lena understood instinctively it wasn't done yet. There was still more to come, more challenges ahead. For now, though, they had won a small victory against the odds, as Lena sat back. Exhausted but triumphant, she realized something important. This wasn't just about saving two lives. It was about trust, about connection, about finding common ground even in the vast, lonely expanse of space, whatever tomorrow brought. Lena knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't face it alone. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from the cryo revival chambers. Lena sat on a stool near the table, her hands gripping the edge tightly. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. Who or what was this alien? Why had it come to her station, of all places? And most importantly, why had it trusted her enough to bring its pups here? The creature, still curled protectively around the chambers, seemed to sense her unease. It lifted its head slightly, its good eye meeting hers. There was intelligence there more than Lena had expected. She swallowed hard, trying to push down the fear that lingered in the back of her mind. Fear of the unknown. Fear of making the wrong choice. Lena glanced at Halo's console, which displayed the pups' vitals. Their heart rates were stabilizing, their body temperatures slowly rising. Whatever they were survivors. But survival wasn't guaranteed yet. The mother's injuries needed attention. And Lena knew she couldn't keep ignoring them just because the alien refused to leave its young. "You're hurt," Lena said softly, though she doubted the creature understood her words. "Let me help you." The alien didn't respond right away. Instead, it shifted its weight slightly, leaning closer to the chambers. Its growl was low, but not threatening a warning, perhaps or a plea. Lena hesitated, then reached out slowly, holding up her hands to show she meant no harm. When the alien didn't react aggressively, she grabbed another medkit and moved closer. She started with the worst wound, a deep gash along the creature's side. Blood had crusted over the injury, but fresh streaks still seeped through its fur. Lena cleaned the area as gently as she could, applying antiseptic gel before wrapping it in bandages. The alien flinched occasionally, but stayed still, its focus never wavering from the chambers. As she worked, Lena noticed something strange. The alien's fur shimmered faintly under the lights, almost like the pups. At first she thought it might be frost clinging to its coat, but when she touched it, the texture felt smooth and cool, like glass beneath her fingers. She pulled her hand back quickly, startled by the sensation. The alien tilted its head, watching her curiously. "What are you?" Lena whispered, more to herself than to the creature. She shook her head, pushing the question aside. It didn't matter right now. What mattered was keeping them alive. When she finished treating the visible wounds, Lena leaned back, wiping sweat from her brow. The alien let out a low rumble, almost like a sigh, and relaxed slightly. Its breathing grew steadier, less labored. For the first time since arriving, it seemed to trust her completely. Halo interrupted the silence. "Vital signs for unidentified subjects improving. Estimated recovery time, 6 hours. "Good," Lena muttered, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was late or early, depending on how you looked at it. She hadn't slept in nearly 24 hours, and exhaustion tugged at her eyelids. Still, she couldn't bring herself to leave the medical bay. Not while the pups were still fighting for their lives. Instead, she grabbed a blanket from a nearby cabinet and wrapped it around her shoulders. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, she leaned against the wall, content to watch and wait. The alien followed her lead, settling into a more comfortable position without taking its eyes off the chambers. Time passed slowly. Lena dozed off several times, only to jerk awake moments later, convinced she'd heard something. Each time, she found the alien watching her, its expression unreadable. Eventually, she gave up trying to sleep altogether. Instead, she focused on observing the creature and thinking, why had it come here? Saturnine wasn't exactly a hub of activity. In fact, it was one of the least visited stations in the sector. Most ships avoided it entirely, preferring newer, better-equipped facilities elsewhere. So why had this alien chosen this place, of all places, to seek help? And then there was the freezing. The pups weren't just cold, they had been frozen solid. That level of exposure should have killed them instantly. Yet somehow, they had survived. Was it natural resilience, or something else entirely? Lena's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden change in the room. One of the pups stirred inside its chamber, its tiny limbs twitching. The movement caught the alien's attention immediately. It rose to its feet, stepping closer to the chamber. Lena scrambled up as well, her heart pounding. "It's waking." "Up," she said, though the alien likely didn't understand. She adjusted the settings on the chamber, lowering the temperature gradually to ease the transition. Moments later, the glass door hissed open, releasing a puff of warm air. The pup blinked groggily, its large eyes scanning the room. It let out a high-pitched whine, wriggling weakly in the padded interior. The alien wasted no time. It scooped the pup into its mouth, not biting, just carrying it and placed it gently on the floor beside its sibling, who remained asleep in the second chamber. The pup nuzzled against its mother's leg, whimpering softly. Lena watched, amazed. Despite everything it had been through, the little creature seemed determined to survive. She smiled faintly, feeling a surge of hope. Maybe things would turn out okay after all, but her optimism was short-lived. As she turned back to the monitors, Halo spoke again. Unidentified energy signature detected. Source, external. Proximity increasing. Lena froze. What does that mean? Analysis indicates potential threat. Recommend heightened security measures. Her stomach dropped. A threat, out here. She rushed to the control panel, pulling up the external cameras. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the endless void of space. Then, barely visible against the dark background, a shadow moved. A ship. Small, sleek, and cloaked. It hovered just beyond visual range. Lena's hands trembled as she activated the station's defense grid. Halo, can we identify the ship? Negative. Cloaking technology prevents accurate classification.
Great.
Lena muttered under her breath. She glanced at the alien, who had stiffened noticeably. Its hackles rose, and a low growl rumbled in its throat. It knew something about this ship, something bad. Before Lena could react further, the station shuddered. Violently. Alarms blared overhead, red lights flashing throughout the corridor. The alien barked sharply, nudging its pups toward the corner of the room. Lena stumbled forward, catching herself on the edge of the table. What's happening? She demanded. External. Breach detected, Halo replied. Docking bay compromised. Intruders entering station. Intruders? Lena repeated, panic rising in her chest. She looked at the alien, whose eyes were wide with fear or anger. Who are they? The alien didn't answer, but its behavior told her everything she needed to know. These intruders weren't friendly. They were here for the pups. Lena grabbed a plasma torch from the tool rack, clutching it tightly. She wasn't trained for combat, but she wasn't going to stand by and let anyone hurt these creatures. Not after everything they'd been through. The alien growled again, positioning itself between the pups and the door. Its stance was protective, fierce. Lena stepped up beside it, raising the torch like a weapon. Together, they waited. Moments. Later, the door slid open with a hiss. 3 figures stepped into the room, clad in black armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their helmets obscured their faces, but their weapons long. Brutal-looking rifles left no doubt about their intentions. One of them raised a hand, gesturing for the others to spread out. Lena tightened her grip on the torch, her knuckles white. She glanced at the alien, silently willing it to stay calm. If it attacked too soon, they'd both be overwhelmed. The leader of the group spoke, his voice distorted by a vocoder. Hand over the specimens. Resistance is futile. Lena's blood ran cold. Specimens. They were talking about the pups. She took a step forward, blocking their view of the corner where the pups huddled behind the alien. You're not taking them, she said firmly, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. The leader tilted his head, studying her. Irrelevant human, step aside. No, Lena shot back. You want them? You'll have to go through us. For a moment, the room was eerily silent. Then the leader raised his weapon, aiming directly at her. The alien roared, lunging forward. With terrifying speed, claws slashed through the air, tearing into the nearest intruder's armor. The man screamed, stumbling backward as sparks flew from his suit. Lena acted quickly, swinging the plasma torch like a bat. The heated metal tip grazed another intruder's helmet, leaving a scorched mark. He staggered, giving her just enough time to duck behind a console. Shots rang out, filling the room with deafening noise. The alien dodged and weaved its movements, fluid and precise. It was clear now it wasn't just protecting its pups. It was fighting to kill. The battle was chaotic and intense. Lena did her best to stay out of the way, using whatever tools she could find to fend off attackers. Meanwhile, the alien fought with ferocious determination, taking down 2 more intruders before the third managed to land a hit. A bolt of energy struck its shoulder, sending it crashing to the ground. No, Lena shouted, rushing to its side. She aimed the torch at the remaining intruder, forcing him to retreat momentarily. Kneeling beside the alien, she checked its wound. It was bad worse than any of the others, but it wasn't fatal. Not yet. The alien growled weakly, urging her to move. Lena nodded, understanding. She grabbed the torch and stood, ready to fight again if necessary. But the intruder hesitated, glancing at the door. Reinforcements were coming. He wouldn't risk staying longer. The medical bay was a mess. Scorch marks marred the walls where energy bolts had struck. Broken glass from shattered equipment littered the floor, crunching underfoot as Lena moved around the room. The air smelled of burnt metal and fear. Despite the chaos, Lena couldn't stop to clean up. Her focus was on the alien on. Kayla lay sprawled near the corner of the room, her body trembling with exhaustion. Blood seeped from the fresh wound on her shoulder, staining the fur around it dark red. Her breathing was shallow, but she refused to rest completely. Every time Lena tried to examine her, Kayla growled softly, nudging her pups closer to her side. The two tiny creatures huddled together, their eyes wide and frightened. They were awake now, though still weak from their ordeal. Their shimmering skin caught the dim light, glowing faintly like liquid silver. Lena crouched beside Kayla, holding out a hand cautiously. "I need to help you," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You won't survive if we don't treat that wound." Good eye locked onto hers, filled with pain but also trust. Slowly, she relaxed, allowing Lena to approach. The pups whimpered quietly, pressing themselves against their mother's leg. Lena smiled faintly at them, before turning her attention back to Kella's injury. She grabbed a fresh medkit from the cabinet and began cleaning the wound as carefully as she could. The alien flinched occasionally, but stayed still, her gaze fixed on her young. As Lena worked, she noticed something strange. Kella's fur wasn't just shimmering, it seemed to pulse faintly, almost like it was alive. When she touched it, the texture felt smooth and cool, unlike anything she'd ever encountered before. It reminded her of the pup's skin, which had glowed softly when they thawed. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't ordinary animals. There was something extraordinary about them, something Lena couldn't explain. When she finished bandaging Kella's shoulder, Lena sat back, on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead. "That should hold for now," she muttered, more to herself than to the alien. She glanced at the pups again, who were starting to explore the edges of the room. One of them sniffed at a piece of broken glass, while the other pawed curiously at a fallen tool. Lena chuckled softly, watching them, for all their mysterious qualities. They acted like any other curious younglings, playful and full of energy. But the moment of calm didn't last long. Aloe's mechanical voice interrupted the silence. "Unidentified energy signatures detected. Multiple contacts approaching station perimeter." Lena's heart sank. "What does that mean?" she asked, already dreading the answer. "Analysis. Indicates additional hostile forces. Recommend immediate evacuation protocols." "Evacuation?" Lena repeated, shaking her head. "Can't leave." "Where would we go?" Kayla growled, low in her throat, rising unsteadily to her feet. Injured shoulders sagged, but she positioned herself protectively in front of her pups. Lena stood beside her, gripping the plasma torch tightly. She had no idea how many intruders were coming, or what kind of weapons they carried. All she knew was that they wouldn't get past her knot without a fight. The station shuddered violently, throwing Lena off balance. She stumbled into the wall, bracing herself as alarms blared overhead. Red lights flashed throughout the corridor, casting eerie shadows across the room. Kayla barked sharply, her hackles rising. Pups whimpered, retreating to the farthest corner of the room. "They're here," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible over the noise. She tightened her grip on the torch, her knuckles white. "Halo, seal all doors leading to this section." Complying, the AI replied. Tss. Later, the heavy metal doors slid shut with a hiss, locking them in Nor, so Lena hoped. But the intruders were prepared. A loud bang echoed through the station as explosives breached the outer hull. Lena winced, covering her ears instinctively. The sound was deafening, followed by the sharp hiss of escaping air. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, preventing total decompression, but the damage was done. The intruders had forced their way inside. Lena turned to Kayla, her expression grim. "We'll have to fight our way out." Kayla nodded slightly, her good eye gleaming with determination. She nudged her pups toward Lena, silently urging her to take care of them. Lena hesitated, then scooped the tiny creatures into her arms. They squirmed briefly before settling against her chest, their warmth comforting despite the danger surrounding them. "Okay," Lena said, steeling herself. "Let's do this." She led the way out of the medical bay, moving cautiously down the corridor. Kayla followed closely behind, her movements stiff but purposeful. Together, they made their way toward the control room, where Lena hoped to activate the station's defense grid. If she could trigger an EMP pulse, it might disable the intruders' weapons long enough for them to escape. The corridors were eerily quiet, the only sounds the hum of machinery and the distant echo of footsteps. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she peered around each corner, half expecting to see armed figures waiting for them. But so far, the path was clear. When they reached the control room, Lena set the pups down gently on a nearby chair. She pulled up the security feeds on the monitors, scanning for signs of movement. Several groups of intruders were spreading throughout the station, systematically searching each section. They hadn't reached the control room yet, but it was only a matter of time. "Halo," Lena said urgently. "Activate the EMP sequence. Target all non-essential systems. Warning. Activation will result in temporary loss of life support functions. Proceed." "Yes," Lena snapped. "Do it now." The AI complied without further argument. Moments later, a high-pitched whine filled the air as the EMP charged. Lena held her breath, counting down the seconds until the pulse fired. When it finally did, the lights flickered and died, plunging the station into darkness. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then came the sound of confusion, shouts and curses echoing through the halls as the intruders' equipment failed. Lena grinned triumphantly, turning back to Kayla. "Now's our chance," Kayla barked softly, gathering her pups once more. Lena grabbed a flashlight from the desk and led the way toward the docking bay. The station's backup generators kicked in shortly after, restoring partial lighting to the corridors. They moved quickly, avoiding areas where intruders were likely to regroup. When they reached the docking bay, Lena realized they had another problem. The main airlock was sealed shut, damaged during the initial breach. Without tools to repair it, they were trapped inside the station. She cursed under her breath, pacing back and forth as she tried to think of a solution. Kayla stepped forward, placing a paw on the control panel. Her fur shimmered brightly, and a low hum vibrated through the floor. Lena stared in disbelief as the airlock began to open, responding to some kind of signal emitted by the alien. Within moments, the hatch slid aside, revealing the cold emptiness of space beyond. "How did you do that?" Lena asked, awestruck. Kayla didn't answer. Instead, she nudged her pups toward the opening, encouraging them to follow. Lena hesitated, unsure whether to trust the alien's instincts. But there was no other choice. If they stayed, the intruders would find them eventually. Out there, at least, they had a chance. Taking a deep breath, Lena stepped through the airlock. Clutching the pups tightly, Kayla followed close behind, her injured shoulder dragging slightly. As soon as they were outside, the airlock sealed shut automatically, cutting them off from the station. The void of space stretched endlessly around them, vast and unforgiving. Lena's suit provided oxygen, but she knew it wouldn't last forever. She looked at Kayla, who seemed oddly calm despite their predicament. The alien tilted her head, gesturing toward a distant point in the darkness. "What are you looking at?" Lena asked, squinting into the void. Before Kayla could respond, bright light appeared on the horizon. It grew rapidly, resolving into the shape of a sleek, angular ship. The vessel hovered silently, its surface reflecting the stars like a mirror. Lena gasped, recognizing the design immediately. Belonged to the Virini, the same species as Kayla and her pups. The ship descended slowly, coming to a stop just above them. A beam of light enveloped the group, pulling them upward into the craft. Lena clung to the pups, shielding them with her body as the world around her blurred and shifted. When the light faded, she found herself standing in a spacious chamber, filled with advanced technology. The air smelled clean and crisp, unlike the stale atmosphere of Theta-9.K. ALA barked softly, stepping forward to greet several figures who emerged from the shadows. They resembled Hertal Lupin, creatures with shimmering fur and intelligent eyes. One of them approached Lena, bowing slightly in a gesture of respect. "You have saved our kin," the figure said, its voice deep and resonant. "For this, we owe you a debt." Lena blinked, stunned by the sudden turn of events. I didn't do much," she stammered. "Just tried to help." The figure smiled faintly, revealing sharp teeth. "Help is rare among humans. You have earned our gratitude." Kayla nudged her gently, drawing Lena's attention back to the pups. They were safe now, surrounded by their own kind. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. Lena exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Now, it was time to let go. The chamber aboard the Varini ship was unlike anything Lena had ever seen. Its walls shimmered faintly, glowing with soft hues of blue and silver. The air smelled clean, almost electric, as though charged with energy. Strange symbols floated across translucent panels embedded in the walls, shifting and rearranging themselves like living patterns. Lena stood awkwardly near the center of the room, clutching the two pups tightly against her chest. Their warm bodies squirmed slightly, but they didn't protest, perhaps sensing that they were safe now. Kayla moved to join the other, Varini, who had gathered around them. They spoke in low tones, their voices blending into a rhythmic hum that resonated through the chamber. Lena couldn't understand their language, but she could feel its weight, the urgency beneath their words, the shared concern. She glanced at Kayla, hoping for some kind of explanation, but the alien's focus remained on her companions. Finally, one of the Varini stepped forward. He was taller than Kayla, his fur streaked with gold instead of silver. His eyes glowed faintly, and when he spoke, his voice carried a deep authority. "Human," he said, addressing Lena directly. "You have done us a great service. We are grateful." Anna shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. What I thought was right," she said softly. "They needed help." The golden-furred Varini nodded slowly. "Your actions speak louder than words. Few humans would risk so much for strangers." He gestured toward Kayla, who limped closer, her injured shoulder still bandaged.
"Right.
"Is Kayla, daughter of our clan leader. Her pups carry something precious within them, something worth protecting." "Precious," Lena repeated, frowning. She looked down at the tiny creatures in her arms. Their shimmering skin caught the light, glowing faintly like liquid glass. "What do you mean?" The Varini hesitated, exchanging glances with Kayla before continuing. "Our species has an ancient legacy," he explained. "Long ago, we were guardians of knowledge passed down by those who came before us, star maps hidden in ruins across the galaxy, secrets buried deep within the stars themselves. These maps contain coordinates to powerful artifacts, weapons, capable of ending wars." Lena's eyes widened. "Weapons? You're talking about weapons?" "Yes," the Varini replied solemnly. "But these are not ordinary tools of destruction. They're relics created by a civilization far older than ours or yours. To unlock them requires a Kia genetic marker encoded only in certain individuals. Kella's pups bear this marker." Lena stared at the pups, her mind racing. She had saved them because they were innocent, helpless creatures fighting for survival. But now she realized there was more to their story, much more. "So that's why those intruders came after them," she said slowly. "They wanted the pups because of whatever's inside them." The golden-furred Varini nodded grimly. "The Draken seek to control the relics for their own gain. If they succeed, countless lives will be lost. That is why we must protect these young ones at all costs." Kayla stepped forward, placing a paw gently on Lena's leg. Her good eye met Lena's gaze, filled with gratitude and something else. Resolve. Lena understood without words. This wasn't over yet. "We cannot stay here long." "Duh," the golden-furred Varini continued. "The Draken will track us soon. Enough. Already their ships scour nearby systems. We must reach the nearest ruin and decode the map fragments hidden there. Only then can we ensure the pup's safety." Lena frowned, feeling a pang of unease. "What happens if the Draken find you first?" "It will stop at nothing to claim the pups," he said bluntly. "And they will destroy anyone who stands in their way." Silence fell over the chamber. Lena hugged the pups closer, feeling their tiny hearts beating against her chest. For all their mysterious qualities, they were still just children, fragile and vulnerable. The thought of handing them over to the Draken made her stomach churn. "I'm coming with you," she said, suddenly surprising even herself. "If the Draken are hunting you, you'll need all the help you can get." The Vareni exchanged startled looks. "That is not necessary," the golden-furred one said firmly. "You have already done enough. Your presence puts you in greater danger." "No," Lena insisted, shaking her head. "I brought Kayla and her pups aboard That-9. If I hadn't helped them, none of this would have happened. Besides," she paused, glancing at Kayla, "they trust me." "I trust them." Kayla let out a low rumble, nodding slightly. The golden-furred Vareni sighed, clearly reluctant, but eventually relented. "Very well," he said. "But know this. The path ahead will be perilous. Are you prepared to face it?" Lena swallowed hard, her throat dry. "I don't have a choice," she said quietly. "Not anymore." Hours later, the ship entered hyperspace, leaving the battered remains of That-9 far behind. Lena sat cross-legged on the floor of the main chamber, watching as the pups played with each other. They tumbled and rolled, their movements clumsy but full of energy. Occasionally one of them would yip or bark, eliciting chuckles from the nearby Vareni, despite everything they'd been through. The little creatures seemed determined to enjoy life. Kayla lay nearby, resting her injured shoulder. Her breathing had grown steadier, though she still winced occasionally when she moved. Lena crawled over to her, holding out a hand cautiously. "How are you feeling?" she asked, knowing Kayla wouldn't understand the exact words, but hoping. The tone conveyed concern. Kayla nudged her hand gently, letting out a soft growl. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost affectionate. Lena smiled faintly, scratching behind the alien's ear. "You're tough," she murmured. "Stronger than anyone gives you credit for." As the hours passed, Lena found herself growing more comfortable among the Vareni. They weren't hostile or intimidating. If anything, they reminded her of wolves, back on Earth, social, loyal, and fiercely protective of their own. Several of them approached her curiously, sniffing her hands. And examining the pups, Lena laughed nervously at first but soon relaxed, realizing they meant no harm. Eventually, the golden-furred Vareni returned, carrying a small device in his jaws. He set it down carefully in front of Lena, stepping back to allow her space. "This is a translator," he explained. "Will allow you to communicate with us more effectively." Lena picked up the device, turning it over in her hands. It resembled a smooth, flat stone, cool to the touch. She pressed it against her temple. As instructed, wincing slightly as a sharp prick sent a jolt of warmth through her skull. Moments later, the hum of Vareni speech transformed into clear, understandable words. "You hear us now?" the golden-furred one asked. "Yes," Lena replied, amazed. "It works good," he said. "We approach the ruins soon." "Preparation is essential." "What kind of preparation?" Lena asked. "The ruins are dangerous," he explained. "Traps left by the ancients guard the star maps. Only those with the proper markers can navigate safely. Kayla and her pups will lead us, but we must remain vigilant." Lena nodded, gripping the translator tightly. Understood. When the ship exited hyperspace, the ruins loomed large in the viewport, a jagged, desolate landscape littered with crumbling towers and twisted spires. The structures appeared to be made of black stone, etched with intricate carvings that pulsed faintly. With light, a thick mist hung over the ground, obscuring visibility beyond a few meters. The Vareni disembarked cautiously, forming a protective circle around Kayla and her pups. Lena followed close behind, clutching a plasma torch handed to her by one of the crew members. She didn't ask questions, she just accepted it gratefully, knowing she might need it soon, as they ventured deeper into the ruins. The air grew colder, tinged with an eerie stillness. The carvings on the walls seemed to shift and change as they passed, as though alive. Lena shivered, clutching the pups tighter. Something about this place felt wrong and natural. Suddenly, a loud click echoed through the corridor. Lena froze, her heart pounding. One of the Vareni stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the air. Before anyone could react, The ground beneath them began to tremble. Panels slid open in the ceiling, revealing rows of sharp spikes descending rapidly. "Move!" the golden-furred Vareni shouted. Everyone scattered, dodging the falling traps. Kayla barked sharply, urging her pups toward a narrow passageway. Lena ran after them, leaping over debris and narrowly avoiding being impaled. Back, tearing apart sections of the collapsing ceiling to create a path forward. When the dust settled, they regrouped in a smaller chamber. The golden-furred Vareni checked for injuries, his expression grim. "More traps lie ahead," he warned. "Stay alert." Lena nodded, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She glanced at Kayla, who stood tall despite her wounds. The alien's determination inspired her to keep moving, to keep fighting. Whatever waited for them in the depths of the ruins, they would face it together. For now, though, they had survived another challenge, and that gave Lena hope. The ruins were darker now, the faint glow from the carvings barely enough to light their path. Lena stayed close to Kayla and her pups, her hand gripping the plasma torch tightly. Every step felt heavy, as if the very air resisted their movement. The Vareni moved cautiously, their glowing eyes scanning the shadows for signs of danger. The golden-furred leader, who introduced himself as Rinner, took point, sniffing the air and listening for any unusual sounds. Lena glanced at the pups often, marveling at how calm they seemed despite the chaos around them. Their shimmering skin pulsed faintly, almost like they were breathing in time with the ruins themselves. She wondered if it was just her imagination, or if the ruins somehow recognized them, responding to whatever ancient markers ran through their veins. "This place feels alive," Lena whispered to no one in particular. "It is," Rinner replied without looking back. "The ancients designed these ruins to test those who enter. Only the chosen can pass." "The chosen?" Lena asked, frowning. "You mean the pups?" Rinner nodded slowly. "Their blood carries the key to unlocking the star maps. Without them, we would not have made it this far." Lena swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had saved the pups once, but now their survival meant more than just protecting innocent lives. It meant safeguarding something far greater, something that could change the fate of entire civilizations. As they pressed deeper into the ruins, the traps became more frequent and more dangerous. One moment, the floor beneath them shifted, revealing a pit filled with jagged blades. Another moment, walls began closing in, forcing them to sprint through narrow passages. Each time, Kella's instincts guided them safely through, her growls warning the group of impending dangers. Lena followed blindly, trusting the alien's judgment completely. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ruins. The ceiling stretched high above them, disappearing into darkness. In the center of the room stood a pedestal carved from black stone, its surface etched with glowing symbols that shifted constantly. Around the pedestal, a series of platforms floated in midair, connected by thin bridges of light. Reiner stepped forward, his voice low and reverent. "This is at the gateway to the star maps." Kayla nudged her pups gently, urging them toward the pedestal. Little creatures hesitated, their wide eyes scanning the room nervously. Then, as if sensing their mother's encouragement, they padded forward together, their movements synchronized. Lena watched in awe as the pups climbed onto the pedestal, their tiny paws touching the glowing symbols. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light. The symbols on the pedestal flared brightly, sending waves of energy rippling outward. The floating platforms lit up, forming a complex pattern that spiraled upward like a staircase. A deep hum filled the air, vibrating through Lena's bones. "What's happening?" she asked, shielding her eyes. "The map fragments are activating," Rinner explained. "The pups' genetic markers are decoding the information stored within." Lena stared at the pups, her heart swelling with pride. They looked so small, yet their presence commanded such power. She couldn't help but wonder what kind of legacy they carried on, whether they truly understood the burden placed upon them. Before anyone could react further, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. Dust rained down from the ceiling, as sections of the wall crumbled, revealing figures clad in black armor. The Dracoon had found them. "There," one of the intruders shouted, raising his weapon. "Take the specimens." Lena's stomach dropped. She turned to Kayla, panic rising in her chest. "What do we do?" Kayla barked sharply, positioning herself between the pups and the approaching enemies. The Varini formed a protective circle around the pedestal, snarling fiercely. Renner stepped forward, his voice commanding, "Protect the pups at all costs." The battle began instantly. Energy bolts flew through the air, striking the walls and shattering chunks of stone. The Varini fought with brutal efficiency, tearing into the Draken with claws and teeth. Lena ducked behind a broken pillar, clutching the plasma torch tightly. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay focused. If she froze now, she'd be putting everyone in danger, including the pups. A Draken soldier spotted her and charged, his weapon raised. Lena swung the torch instinctively, the heated tip grazing his helmet. He stumbled backward, giving her just enough time to scramble away. Another Varini leaped onto him, finishing the fight before he could recover. Despite their efforts, the Draken kept coming. More soldiers poured into the chamber, overwhelming the defenders. Lena's heart raced as she searched for an escape route. The floating platforms caught her eye. If they could reach them, maybe they could use the decoded map fragments to flee Renner. She shouted over the noise, "We need to get to the platforms." Renner nodded, barking orders to his companions. Together they fought their way toward the pedestal, clearing a path for Kayla and her pups. Lena followed closely, using the torch to fend off attackers whenever necessary. The pups remained on the pedestal, their glowing forms pulsing brighter. With each passing second, when they finally reached the base of the platforms, Renner turned to Lena. "Take the pups. Follow the path upward. We will hold them off." "No," Lena protested. "You'll be killed." "We cannot fail," Renner said firmly. "Go, trust us." Kayla nudged her gently, urging her to obey. Reluctantly, Lena scooped up the pups and stepped onto the first platform. It wobbled slightly under her weight but held steady. She glanced back at the Varini, who were already engaging the Draken in fierce combat. Kayla stood beside Renner, her injured shoulder dragging, but her stance unyielding. "I'm sorry," Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. She didn't want to leave them behind, but she knew there was no other choice. Taking a deep breath, she began climbing the platforms, following the spiral staircase of light. The higher she went, the quieter the battle became. The sounds of fighting faded into the distance, replaced by the hum of the activated map fragments. No, you're not focused. On moving forward, her arms aching from carrying the pups. They whimpered softly, sensing her fear, but otherwise remained still. When she reached the top, she found herself standing on a circular platform surrounded by holographic projections. Stars, planets, and nebulae floated around her, forming intricate patterns that shifted and changed. At the center of the display, a single star burned brighter than the rest, its coordinates highlighted in glowing text. "This must be it," Lena murmured, staring at the projection. "The location of the artifact." One of the pups let out a soft yip, drawing her attention. Its skin shimmered brightly, and suddenly, the entire chamber vibrated with energy. The holograms expanded outward, filling the space with cascading streams of light. Lena shielded her eyes, overwhelmed by the brilliance. Then, without warning, the chamber shook violently. Alarms blared, and the ruins began collapsing. Sections of the walls crumbled, sending debris raining down. Lena clutched the pups tightly, bracing herself against the shaking platform. "Hold on," she shouted, though she doubted they could understand her. "We're getting out of here." Below her, the battle raged on. Through the dust and chaos, Lena caught glimpses of the Varini holding their ground, refusing to give up. Kayla fought alongside them, her movements swift and precise, despite her injuries. Even as the ruins collapsed around them, they stood firm, protecting her escape, with no time to waste. Lena activated the platform's controls, triggering a subspace portal. A swirling vortex of light appeared in front of her, pulling her forward. She hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the crumbling chamber one last time. The image of Kayla and the Varini burned into her memory, testament to their courage and sacrifice. Taking a deep breath, Lena stepped into the portal, clutching the pups tightly. The world around her dissolved into a blur of colors and sensations. She felt weightless, untethered from reality. For a brief moment, everything went silent, and then, with a sudden jolt, she landed on solid ground. Lena blinked, disoriented. She was no longer in the ruins, but in a vast open field bathed in sunlight. The air smelled fresh and clean, unlike the stale atmosphere of the station or the oppressive stillness of the ruins. She looked around, searching for signs of life. In the distance, she spotted a sleek Vireni ship descending toward her relief. Washed over her as the ship touched down gently. The ramp lowered, and several familiar faces emerged, including Kayla and Rinner. They were battered and bruised, but alive. "You made it," Rinner said, his voice filled with admiration. "Against all odds, you succeeded." Lena smiled faintly, holding the pups closer. "We did it together," nuzzling her young affectionately. Her good eye met Lena's gaze, filled with gratitude, and something else. Respect. As the group boarded the ship, Lena realized their journey was far from over. The star map had revealed the location of the artifact, but retrieving it would come with its own challenges. For now, though, they had won a crucial victory. Together, they had faced the impossible and triumphed. The Vireni ship soared through the stars, its sleek design cutting effortlessly through hyperspace. Inside, Lena sat cross-legged on the floor of the main chamber, cradling the two pups in her lap. They had grown quieter since leaving the ruins, their glowing skin dimming slightly as if they were conserving energy. Lena stroked their fur gently, marveling at how soft it felt beneath her fingers. Despite everything they'd been through, they seemed almost serene. Kayla lay nearby, her injured shoulder finally healing thanks to advanced medical treatments aboard the ship. Her eyes were closed, but Lena knew she wasn't sleeping. Kayla was listening not just to the hum of the engines or the quiet chatter of the Vireni crew, but to something deeper, something ancient. Rinner approached Lena, his golden furred coat gleaming faintly in the soft light of the chamber. "We are close," he said, his deep voice steady. "Coordinates lead to a system untouched by time." Lena nodded, though. She didn't fully understand what he meant. She glanced at the holographic map displayed on a nearby panel. It showed a cluster of stars surrounding a single planet, a barren world, covered in jagged mountains and endless deserts. Somewhere on that planet lay the artifact, the relic capable of ending the war with the Draken. "What happens when we find it?" Lena asked cautiously. Rinner hesitated, his glowing eyes fixed on hers. "That depends on many things. The artifact is powerful, yes, but also dangerous. Only those chosen by the ancients can wield it safely. And the pups." Lena pressed. "Are they ready?" "They carry the markers," Rinner replied simply. "But readiness is not measured by blood alone. It is tested by spirit." Lena frowned, unsure what that meant. She looked down at the pups, who gazed up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Whatever challenges awaited them, she knew one thing for certain: they couldn't face them alone. When the ship exited hyperspace, the sight that greeted them was breathtaking. The planet loomed large in the viewport, its surface shimmering faintly under three suns hanging low in the sky. Jagged cliffs rose like broken teeth against the horizon, while rivers of molten lava carved paths through the rocky terrain. It was beautiful and terrifying. The Vireni descended carefully, avoiding detection from any potential threats. As they landed in a secluded valley, Lena noticed strange structures scattered across the landscape. They resembled ruins, but unlike the ones they had visited before, these were intact and touched by time. Their surfaces glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the pups' breathing. "This place feels alive," Lena murmured, echoing her earlier thoughts. "It is Rinner," confirmed. "These are the tombs of the ancients. Guardians. Watch over them still." "Guardians," Lena repeated, her stomach tightening. "You mean there's more danger here?" Rinner nodded gravely. "The artifact is protected. Only the worthy may claim it." Before Lena could ask further questions, the ship's sensors blared a warning. A fleet of Draken ships appeared on the horizon, descending rapidly toward their location. Panic rippled through the Vareni crew, but Rinner remained calm. "We must move quickly," he said, turning to Kayla. "Take the pups to the central tomb. We will hold off the Draken." Kayla barked softly, urging Lena to follow her. Together, they stepped off the ship, the heat of the planet pressing against their skin. The air smelled metallic, almost electric, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated faintly. Lena clutched the pups tightly, her heart pounding as she followed Kayla toward the largest structure in the valley, a towering pyramid made of black stone. Behind them, Virani formed a defensive line, snarling fiercely. As the Draken soldiers advanced, energy bolts flew through the air, striking the ground and sending plumes of dust into the sky. Lena forced herself not to look back. She trusted Rinner and his warriors to buy them enough time. As they neared the pyramid, its entrance slid open, silently revealing a dark corridor lit by glowing symbols along the walls. Kayla led the way, her movements cautious but determined. Lena followed closely, her breath coming in short gasps. The pups whimpered softly, sensing the tension around them. Inside, the air grew cooler, carrying a faint hum that resonated through the stone. The symbols on the walls shifted constantly, forming patterns that seemed to guide them forward. Lena glanced at the pups, whose skin began glowing brighter with each step. It was as if the pyramid recognized them, as if it welcomed them. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the structure. In the center stood a pedestal similar to the one in the ruins, though this one pulsed with a brilliant light. Above it floated an objecta crystalline sphere encased in swirling energy. Its surface shimmered with colors that defied description. Shifting between hues of gold, blue, and silver, the artifact Kayla growled softly, nudging the pups toward the pedestal. Lena set the pups down gently, watching as they approached the sphere. Their tiny paws touched the pedestal, and instantly, the chamber erupted in light. The sphere descended slowly, hovering just above the pups' heads. Waves of energy radiated outward, filling the room with warmth. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the pups let out a harmonious sound, a blend of whines and growls that resonated like music. The sphere responded, splitting into fragments that spiraled around the chamber. Each fragment embedded itself into the walls, activating ancient mechanisms hidden within the pyramid. Outside, the ground trembled violently. The Draken ships faltered, caught in beams of energy emitted by the pyramid. One by one, they exploded. In bursts of light, their wreckage scattering across the valley. The Vareni cheered, their voices echoing triumphantly. Inside the chamber, the pups collapsed onto the pedestal, exhausted but safe. Kayla nuzzled them gently, letting out a low growl of relief. Lena smiled faintly, tears streaming down her face. They had done it. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Rinner entered the chamber moments later, his expression filled with awe. "It is done," he said softly. "The Guardians have awakened." "What does that mean?" Lena asked, wiping her eyes. "It means the balance has shifted," Rinner explained. "The artifact's power will protect us and destroy our enemies." Lena nodded, though she still didn't fully understand. All she knew was that the pups had fulfilled their destiny. Whatever burden they carried, they bore it with courage and strength. As the group prepared to leave the pyramid, Lena lingered near the pedestal, staring at the glowing symbols etched into the stone. She felt a strange sense of peace, a connection to something greater than herself. For the first time in her life, she realized she was part of something bigger, something incredible. Kayla nudged her gently, drawing her attention back to the present. Lena smiled, patting the alien's head affectionately. "Let's go home," she said softly. Together, they left the pyramid, stepping out into the sunlight. The valley was quiet now, the threat of the Draken gone. Vareni gathered around them, their expressions filled with gratitude and respect. "You have earned our trust," Rinner said, bowing slightly. "And our friendship." Lena returned the gesture, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without you, all of you." Dot. Kayla let out a soft bark, her good eye gleaming. With pride, the pups yipped happily, bounding toward their mother. Lena laughed, shaking her head in amazement. From a chance encounter on a remote station to the discovery of an ancient relic, their journey had changed her forever. As the Varini ship lifted off the ground heading back toward the stars, Lena gazed out the viewport, watching the planet fade into the distance. She didn't know what the future held or whether she would ever see Kayla and her pups again. But one thing was certain. She had made a difference, and sometimes that was enough.